Hi, everybody, and welcome to World Unity Week. I'm Dr. Woolley-Barker. I'm going to share a little bit that we haven't talked about, the last piece that we haven't talked about. So here we are. We have all these problems that we're talking about that need to be solved so urgently, and it's crazy making. And, it's we have all the technology and everything we need, even the will, but we still can't seem to get these things done. But what is that mismatch? We've talked a lot about this week, so I'm trying to go a little different route, but I want to stress that these problems that we talk about are really patterns caused by relationships between things. It's process, not the structures themselves. So to change things, we need to change the relationships. We need to change the patterns. And that changes the situations. So really, it comes down to understanding life's deep patterns and being intimately familiar with them. These deep patterns run through everything. Life is benign and simple and robust and amazing, the way that it makes itself and heals itself and does it at ambient temperature and water. And everything is edible or creates shelter for something else. So all this energy is flowing from the sun or from the live interior of the earth, and it's subject to the special conditions of our planet. So the cycles and atmosphere and gravity and the poles and all these things create these deep patterns that we see over and over again. And energy and material are flowing in from the sun to life space, either things that are converting sulfur into energy from the earth itself, or from sunlight into energy with plants, and fixing that atmospheric carbon into sugar. So these patterns are like, water flowing downhill. You see the same patterns coming again and again. And so it allows us to go anywhere in the world. And if you're familiar with these kinds of patterns, you can see the way that things want to be, the way they want to become, the potential in them. Partners in a dance, we talk about Gaia's dance. So indigenous peoples are the original scientists. They knew so much about their local habitats and these deep patterns and flows and the way that things want to be, and they would enhance them and work with them. So that's what we have is our special human talent for conscious evolution. The way that we can surf for free on these patterns is done most flexibly by thinking about it. Potential energy, we talk about the difference between where things are and where they would like to go if they could move freely. So this potential energy is always in play, and living things surf for free on this potential, and it allows them to do things without putting as much energy as we do, build a dam or hold up a freeway or whatever. Such a lot of energy and material we put into these things, but life is surfing for free on this potential in motion. Biomimicry, I come from a biomimicry background, and this is one example. Jay Harmon at Pax Water, he's a surfer, and he noticed that the waves, that energy doesn't move in a straight line, it actually moves in spirals. And so by designing fans and impellers that mimic that flow, that align with that flow, now they're 85% quieter and less energy. So this is the kind of deep pattern that we have in everything we do. This is a physical manifestation, but we have the same patterns in every aspect of our lives. So every living entity has a unique developmental potential. And that's not just us, it's also our superorganisms and communities and organizations and all the things that we do together. So for us as human superorganisms, and we've talked about this all week long, so I'm not going to go into that. But for us as superorganisms, our potential is not individual, it's collective, and it's multi-generational, and it's between species. So it's actually home. It's home. Our potential is in our homes. So this potential-oriented design grows the capabilities that allow us to surf for free on what's already in motion. So life is always creating conditions conducive to life to surf on those patterns. So I just wanted to share, I've got 2 new books coming out. This Team Lab, this Teaming Transformation, is actually a workbook. So it takes all the concepts from teaming and then it applies it. So it guides you through applying these principles to your own work. So there's like lots of opportunity to write and to think about that. And because, these things can be kind of theoretical and high level, but really they need to be applied, and they're very down to earth, common sense things. So I want to just share that I'm doing a course on this. It's 6 weeks, and it's going to go through the workbook, and you'll get it before everybody else. It actually starts September 15th. All right. So the goal of life is to match your nature with nature, but it's nature where? What nature? It's the nature around you. It's your home. And what other superorganisms do is they, by giving in this way, by sharing and differentiating, becoming more specific in your talents and sharing and exchanging, they get this fresh on demand abundance. And so when I was traveling with the Kuna people down their river, the Rio Kangandi, which is the source of their identity. When we got hungry, we'd just pull a fruit off the tree. And when we were thirsty, we'd just drink from the water. And, that seems like a Edenic paradise, like an ideal that's beyond reaching. But we had that, and if you look at indigenous societies, the hunter-gatherers, they historically worked only 2 hours a day. And now, look at, as I personally work 85 hours a week. That's parasitism, I think. So life is working in these distinct connected patches, and yet we put this one size fits all global best practices on everything. And so it really, I think that we need to come back to our place and our home and, our identity. And that requires this biocultural renewal. These bodies of knowledge took tens of thousands of generations to acquire. And now here in just such a short time, we've erased that and eroded that and lost that. And that is really the basis for our conscious evolution, knowing the local patterns and the local relationships. All of our standard operating procedures, everything we think are the best, most efficient way to do things, were really imposed on our ancestors. And it doesn't really matter who you are. They're imposed on all our ancestors, some very recently and some more distantly. But we've all lost touch with our humanity through these generic practices. So what I've been sharing through the week is this superorganism pentad. This is a deep pattern that all superorganisms share. It's not really a science, it's more of a general pattern that I've observed. So superorganism colonies, they share a purpose and an identity. And they're going out, they're finding these scraps of resources, little bits of pollen or scraps of, grass and things like that. And they're gathering it together and they're upcycling it in partnership with other symbiotic relationships. So like the bees are fermenting pollen and nectar, creating honey. The mycelial networks are gathering these particles of nutrients and water and sharing it with the trees in exchange for sugar. So you see this kind of deep pattern over and over again. And of course, humans are cultivating the land around them. They're gathering, and we're also doing this. And then we do it in teams. So superorganisms do it in this team-of-team structure where individual teams, small modules, are doing things, but they have this network structure. And it requires their collective intelligence. So it requires their unique intelligence to be contributed. So it's diversity, autonomy. So what we see, there's that deep superorganism pattern of gathering nutrients, and it really depends on our diversity and our collective intelligence and our autonomy. Sovereignty requires that. So what we see is that superorganisms, because they gather this abundance, their colonies are juicy, honey, collections of abundance. So they're very susceptible to parasites. Parasites are always trying to deceive and steal their collective wealth. So what they do, the parasite comes in, and often it's the sister taxa. So it's their closest relatives, and they'll mimic the scent of the colony to gain entry. And a lot of times they'll use these things called propaganda pheromones, where they'll actually produce a chemical that makes the host colony think they're under attack. So they go crazy and go in circles, and the queen, the parasitic queen, just dives right into the colony and takes over the reproduction of the host. So taking over the labor, host labor, and then what happens is those raw resources go straight to the parasite, not to the colony. And then as that happens, there's no more need for collective intelligence. In fact, you want to suppress that individuality and individual thinking. And then because those individuals are not taking care of their symbionts anymore, the other creatures in their territory, the waste starts accumulating and it poisons the habitat. And then the parasite moves on. So we're operating in this parasitized mindset. And as a result, folks are pretty much blind and illiterate when it comes to the deep patterns of life, the way that life adapts, and even our own human nature. So that's the work that I'm doing here at Borrego Institute for Living Design, which is in Borrego Springs near the Mexican border in California. And we're trying to kind of get people to see fresh, see again. So open their eyes, develop relationships with other creatures, co-create, and learn to see. So tracking art from life and living mythology. So 3 things that we use to kind of rehumanize minds. Learn to see again. So I just want to show you the inside of the build. And so you can, if you want to come and write a book or learn to do something or create something, you're welcome to come. We'd love to have you out there. So it's a very artistic place. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I'm trying to save this land. I have to pay $450,000 on July 1 to save this land. So I'm just putting it out there. If you would like to make a donation, you can go to Geoversity. I'm the dean for the School for Biocultural Renewal there, leadership. So what would it look like to restore a human being from this parasitic state? And I think we need to learn to see again. So many ideals and assumptions and limited perspectives that are constraining our collective intelligence. I mean, just today, here we have a constitution written by all men, and there's no collective intelligence to allow for what we need today. We've got to facilitate this more curiosity, consideration, observation, imagination, and creativity, and experience and practice, familiarity with those deep patterns around us so that we can take care of the creatures that we share our homes with. Rehumanize life and work. We've got this idea of the tragedy of the commons, that it is inevitable. If we're sharing something, we're inevitably going to destroy it because people will cordon it off and degrade the resource if you don't pay a cost to maintain it. So you would think, meerkats, every time they shriek a warning, they would be more likely to get eaten by a hawk. But they do it anyway. So clearly there's more to the story. And the same with people. People share all the time. And then we've done it for tens of thousands of generations. So if a theory doesn't work in practice, it's got to be wrong. And so this came out of the prisoner's dilemma. This is a case in which 2 partners in crime are captured and asked to turn the other one in. And the temptation is to turn your partner in and get off free. But in reality, we play again and again with the same people. And so Hardin's mistake was not realizing that if we play once, yes, you would cordon it off, but we don't. So tit for tat is the way that life works. And these are little vampire bats. They need to eat every night. They need to get that blood every night because they're little. They're like hummingbirds. And so if they can't get that night's blood, they'll hit up a friend and their friend will vomit up some blood. They're super friendly that way. That's a deep pattern in nature. I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. And that's a promise that feeds the entire world because the fungi are bringing these nutrients and water to the plants, and the plants are giving sugar in return. Either one of these partners could default on this, but they don't. They don't. Life creates conditions conducive to life. But you can't just go around doing good deeds for everyone because there are parasites, there are cheats. And so reputation is one way to distribute those costs, but that means it requires a name and a language and small circles and good memories. Politicians require these big brains because you've got to manage all these trust relationships. This is the gelada baboon that Dunbar was inspired to come up with his Dunbar's number. We've really hit the high point of that. We can barely make it out of the birth canal, right? So what's happened is, and I actually went into the Bering Sea. I was living on a fishing boat studying these whales because I thought that the answer to what kind of animal we are the answer was in our big brains. But as I went on, I concluded that is not the case, that yes, we've maxed out our brains and we've maxed this out, but what you see in the other superorganisms is that the average brain size actually declines as their group size grows. And we've done this. I don't know if we've seen our brains decline, but if you see kids looking on their phones all day, it wouldn't be surprising. But so what these guys have done, the superorganisms do, is they rely on network reciprocity. So their groups only accept those that scratch backs. And so by doing that, these superorganisms, they make more together. It's not pie, it's not a competition. They're creating more for everyone. So I just wanted to introduce this. These are the deep patterns that you see in people that share commons successfully, but it's the exact same patterns we see in superorganisms. If you ever bother a honeybee hive, they will let you know that you've trespassed on their territory. And they're so invested in place that they have to defend that. And that's true for us as well. So that's Pro-Social World, if you want to check that out. I think that's going to be a cool application for us. So really, we have to work in these bounded, mutually protected commons with transparency and mutual accountability. And of course, in our parasitized state, we've lost this. So what does our conscious evolution require? It's collective intelligence and swarm creativity, and that emerges from our shared purpose and our shared future. And then, what creates a shared future? It's sharing a place, sharing a territory, a home. So it requires our diversity, our autonomy, and our transparent communication. And it requires cultures that support it. So this is what I see as what things that we need to do to restore human being is to prevent this parasitic deception. Here we have fake news, we have all these parasitic elements, preying on our information systems, and we have no protection from that. Maintaining transparent, truthful information, good luck with that. And then this protecting personal and community sovereignty, we've completely eroded that. I mean, just today, I discovered that I've been turned into chattel. My role is to produce workers, and my body is not mine anymore. I'm chattel, I'm property. That's the first thing the parasites do, right? Is take over the labor. Bonobo, the bonobo revolution. So bonobo females, there are equal relatives, right? The chimpanzees are very dominant. Alpha male comes in and takes what he wants. But the bonobos prevent that because any two females will join together and prevent that. They shut down any aggression. And we do something similar. We use this shame. And Darwin noticed this, is that the only thing he could find in our expressions that all humans share was blushing and feeling shame. And we have a physiological response to that, other apes don't have. So this is a direct reflection of our superorganism status. And so these moral systems are kind of like a bigger fish. It's almost like our alpha chimp keeping us in line. You see this in foraging peoples. They're very protective of their commons of diversity and independence, and they maintain that. So I think, not being intimate with the land that feeds us, not working in small groups of trust, having no structures for growing community wealth and value, we are wide open to parasites, and it's getting critical here. So here's this last thing I want to leave you with is the relationship here between this caring for our territories and our symbionts that help us upcycle value and our shared identity, that relationship, just caring. If you stop caring for your home, the shared identity is next to go. So that's a parasitized situation we're in.
Well, Dr. Woolley, I don't have a question to start. I have to say, wow,
Oh,
so good to have you here.
thank you.
No, no, I'm serious. I mean, not only have I been studying your work, because Kurt Johnson shared your book a couple of months ago, but it's deeply embedded. The thinking has been deeply embedded in everything we're doing here in World Unity Week.
Beautiful.
And I'd love you to look it over and learn from you. So I come as a willing, eager to be student and share with you how I've been understanding and adapting what you're saying. Look at all these convergence rooms, each with a shared identity and purpose. And they have been using swarm creativity, right, to engage with event hosts and presenters like you to come and show up and offer, and then making it available as a whole. And it's really profound how you have brought up to date so much of our thinking by the connection with the biomimicry. I mean, Janine Benyus and I have had a history there. When I saw Bioneers, I realized, oh my God, this is the way for us to get over our human supremacy, to
Yeah.
realize we are part of nature. And the connection with the indigenous world is so deep in this community as well. Your work is like a salve to a hurting soul trying to figure out how we get out of the bind we're in. How do we get over our selfishness, our fear, and all those emotions? But in what you were saying, there was so much for us to draw strength and courage and hope from. And I want to know more about geoversity and all of what you're up against there and see how we weave our strategies together as I want to amplify. Now, we have this 99 days of peace through unity. And I don't want to be a parasite sucking more from you, right? But I actually want to be a part of uplifting and making sure the folks that are here realize that this was here and start to weave together over this next 90 days because we have Hold Peace Week in September as like an attractor. And we're catapulting, in effect, and mobilizing and deploying resources collectively. And trust is at the heart of it, the whole thing.
Yes.
The alliance of this sign network. I'm an admin on over 350 Facebook pages.
Wow.
We have learned how to use trusted sharing, a new pattern. It's exactly like you're saying. These are, I think of them as games. I started compassion games, but these
Mhm.
are patterns and they're new and using trust to uplift each other. And when a member goes live, we share that live stream out on all the many members' pages, which makes waves. So your work is a great place for us to think next about where we go from here and how we can also bring good light and amplification to your essential work. This is so key for the world to hear what you have to say. And you're saying it in such a fresh, creative way. Really, you are. How did you get so smart? How did this I want to know. How the hell did it happen? You know.
So you're so kind. Thank you very, very much.
But so many of the things you're talking about, oh my God, I mean, you've summed it up in such a great way, nesting it within biomimicry and bringing your own creativity to it. I mean, just bravo. I know great stuff when I see it.
Oh, that's
I'm,
really, really
uh,
great to hear.
no, no, it's not a compliment. It's an observation. It's what my mentor used to tell me. It's not a compliment. It's just an observation.
I will take your observation.
I just am overcome with joy. And thank you so much, Harry and Brian, for pulling this together. I mean, this is really a dream come true. Uh,
Thank you, Harry. Looking at ourselves as one more animal among all the rest, and then looking at the patterns of what kind of animal we are, what are we trying to become, and what's in the way.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's that new thinking. It's seeing again, though.
It's
And
absolutely like that.
the
And
all systems collapse is forcing us to rethink.
We actually lost Tamsin.
Oh, that's just when I was so excited to have her. Isn't that life? Don't get attached.
Well, I love the new vision that you have. It's the new view of sea level rising.
Totally.
So
Totally.
it's not anymore about the water, it's about humanity in the water that we live in ourselves. We're 70% water and mimic exactly what the planet has shown us. But I really applaud your presence and everything that you've done for us to be here, which is absolutely phenomenal.
It's Tam, if you look at her work, you can see the pattern here, right?
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
guys shared purpose, a shared identity, create a room, self-organized, distributed leadership, make it happen, then we collectively can amplify it. We're finally learning a new way of operating, and this is a beautiful way to look at it and learn from it. So love you guys. Really am grateful.
I talk to these kids and they really don't see a way forward. And then for you to say like, no, you have it all within you. It's all within you already. We have it all. It's a structural problem born of process. It's just math. And so I think, kids, if they can see that there's a way forward and it's just structural, I
Right,
think
right.
it's very inspiring for them.
You know the anthropologist David Graeber,
Hmm.
quote of his I love. He says that the ultimate hidden truth of the world is that it is something that we make and could just as easily make differently.
That's really the case.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to mention,
This is crazy. When the pandemic hit, I couldn't get to Geoversity to do our immersions, and I couldn't. And then they closed the park in the desert that I camp in every week, which is like my home. And so that was really upsetting. And then so I started looking around. Maybe I could rent a place and do some immersions. But then it turned out this place was for sale, and it is. The producer of the I Love Lucy show. It's his bachelor pad, this crazy ranch up in the mountains. There's no roads or anything. And it's 90 acres of wilderness, desert wilderness. And there's a Kumeyaay native village there that was lived in until 1910. And nobody's disturbed anything. It's just been private property since that time. So it's really powerful. There's a spring. There's a herd of endangered bighorn sheep on it. It's just beyond. And so we want to take people through there and teach them to see again, like how to track and do life art, drawing, observations. And then I think finding these fragments of story and song that were the identity that came out of these watersheds, like spring, a source that is the identity of a people. If we can find those fragments and like regenerate them into identities that can, take care of each other again. And the whole thing of, we don't see each other at all because it doesn't matter what other people are doing. You just depends on yourself. How much money am I making? But when you live in a bounded community like this that comes from a place, from a story, then all of a sudden the value is in looking at what your compatriots have to offer and developing it in them. So initiating people into a community with rights and responsibilities. We've lost all that. Nobody is looking at others and thinking like, how can I develop them? So if we can, I think, regenerate these fragments into stories, and we all have our own in our own watersheds, how beautiful is that to reclaim that? So, maybe I'm a dreamer, but I don't think I'm the only one.
You're not.